Hello, my name is Patsy Custis. I'm going to tell you a story about my stepfather, George Washington. You have heard of George Washington, right? Well, anyways, today I'm going to tell you a story about something that happened during the French and Indian War. My stepfather, George Washington, was a colonel in the Virginia militia during the French and Indian War. At this point, America, the 13 colonies, and Great Britain were still friends. Anyways, so the English sent over General Edward Braddock to lead the British troops and the American colonies, the militia, to fight the French and the Indians. As they were going into the frontier, General Braddock had the soldiers clearing a path, which became a great wilderness road. As they're going through the wilderness and they're clearing this path, suddenly, as they got close to the Monongahela River, the French and the Indians attacked out of nowhere. When the French and the Indians fought, they hid behind rocks and trees, and they were protected and sheltered. The British, not so much. The British marched in ranks, they wore bright red coats, and they were easy targets for the French and the Indians to shoot at. Colonel Washington's soldiers fought more like the French and the Indians. They would hide behind things and they would be protected. General Braddock thought that they were weak and that they were cowards. And he didn't like the way that the Virginia militia fought, but it ended up saving their lives. So, all of a sudden, the French and the Indians are attacking the British and the American soldiers. And during a 2-hour period, 1,000 British soldiers were killed or wounded. 1,000 British soldiers out of 1,459 British soldiers. And in that 2-hour period, every single officer was killed or wounded. Every single officer, except for Colonel Washington. General Braddock was wounded in the side, and he ended up dying later on. But George Washington was protected. The Indians leveled their rifles at George Washington. These are the Huron Indians and the Ottawa Indians, and they're trying to shoot at George Washington. But still, none are able to kill him. Then, George Washington is able to lead the soldiers out of battle and save as many as he possibly can. A few years ago, that same Indian who had told his soldiers to fire at all of the officers finally came and was able to talk to George Washington. And I would like to read you a little bit of what he said to Colonel Washington. So first of all, I want to tell you who this great warrior was. He told Colonel Washington, "I am a chief and a ruler over my tribes. My influence extends to the waters of the Great Lakes and to the far blue mountains. I have traveled a long and weary path that I might see the young warrior of that great battle." This Indian chief had come to see Colonel Washington because he was so impressed with what had happened. It was the day when the white man's blood was mixed with the streams of our forests that I first beheld this chief. He's talking to Colonel Washington. The chief told his young men, "Mark yon tall and daring warrior. He is not of the Redcoat tribe. He hath an Indian's wisdom, and his warriors fight as we do. Himself alone is exposed. Quick, let your aim be certain, and he dies." The Indian chief went on to tell Colonel Washington that his soldiers fired 10, 12, 14, 15, even 17 shots at Colonel Washington, but never were they able to kill him. Finally, the chief said, "Stop shooting. It's not going to work. That soldier is protected by a great spirit." And after the retreat, Colonel Washington took off his coat and found 4 bullet holes in his coat. Underneath the bullet holes, he had not been scratched, but he had been protected. He also had 2 horses shot out from underneath him. When the great chief met up with Colonel Washington a few years ago, he made a prophecy over Colonel Washington. The Great Spirit protects this man and guides his destinies. He will become the chief of nations, and a people yet unborn will hail him as the father of a mighty empire. I am come to pay homage to the man who is the particular favorite of heaven and can never die in battle. While the Indian chief may have given credit to the Great Spirit for protecting Colonel Washington, my family and I believe that Colonel Washington was protected by God.